Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger. I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger. I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. I ain't never really wanna flex my gifts, but I think it's my time. Let me check my wrist. You can never dim my shine, I'ma keep on grinding till I reach the top. When it's just in my jeans and I ain't looking back, cause I'm feeling like Chris, bro. They can never slow me down, but they need to hate me, now I'm feeling like Chris. Rock with the team, cause you know that we winning, we with it, we going, we flowing again. I might just go by a Benz, I might just blow my advance, whoa. I did it all for the feeling, alive but I'm making a killing. I'm gonna break every ceiling, cause I need $1 million, but I don't need your money, you can pay me in respect. Cause once I do it big, what's to follow is a check. I need 100 bags, nothing more, nothing less. And the ops feel away, cause I'm next, I'm a threat. Oh yeah. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat. It's a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. I been feeling spectacular, flow so sick it's hazardous. Y'all still suck like Dracula. Zip this beat, let's back it up. And I don't care about critics cause they talk too much, and I know that I gotta keep on grinding, finding myself. I ain't gonna stop until I know I had enough. Mama, I made it, I know that they see me. I'm popping these bottles just like I'm a genie. I'm glad that you made me. It's all in my DNA. I'm about my chips like I'm working for Frito-Lay and bet the bag on myself. I don't do this for my health. Every threat is a champion. Got the title, need a belt. I don't need your money, you can pay me in respect. Once I do it.
But that's still.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hardcore Penn State Football. Oh, Manny Diaz leaves to become the head coach at Duke. We talk about his departure and who Penn State will fill the void with. Penn State gets their first commit in the ever-elusive transfer portal. And the Peach Bowl. The Peachy people were in State College for a press conference today. Some notes coming from there as well. Shawn showing off that shirt. Make sure to like the video here on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, both on YouTube and if you're listening in podcast form. Thank you guys so much. Sip of water here before we get started. Gotta get the vocal cords ready, Shawn.
Nice and lubricated.
Yeah. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Not too bad, Cory. Not too bad. I think we were all, obviously the Manny Diaz news came down, and I think we were all like that relationship with the girl when you end on good terms, and then they get back with somebody else. They get with somebody else, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm really happy for him. Oh yeah, it's really good. It's great. So I think that's where we're at right now. But in all honesty, very happy for Manny Diaz, and my Dolphins play tonight. So I'll go right from here to watching the Fins.
Oh, so you really were kind of pissed off at me for being late tonight.
Nah, it's all right. I'll be able to flip it on here.
Okay.
Also, I was at a wedding this past weekend too, which was fun.
Yep. Well, hunting season's over, so you don't have to worry about me leaving for hunting season anymore. That's done. And
outdoorsman is back.
Yeah. But we will not be live on Wednesday. We will be back the following Monday. The Monday show will be a heavy recruiting show. We kept teasing it. Monday, December 18th will be a we're going to talk about every recruit in the 2024 class. Wednesday is the actual signing day. So we'll kind of like recap it. If anything crazy happened at the end, I guess I should preface by saying early signing day. But it's pretty much signing day. And We'll recap kind of things there, and then we will be off again for Christmas, and we'll be back for the following Wednesday for our Peach Bowl preview, which just rolls off the tongue. So that's kind of the plan there. I'm probably gonna say this at least twice during the episode today. If you haven't done your bowl pick'em yet, the link is on the YouTube description. It's on Twitter. Make sure to fill out your little bowl confidence pick thing. Venmo me $10 and have a chance to win. I don't remember who won last year. You know what? We talked about that before. I think Matty Fresh may have won, but I'm not
I
sure.
am always terrible with the bowl games.
Yeah, they're
I think
hard.
bowl games are the toughest thing to predict because it's, I mean,
Especially with the
first off, you don't know
opt-outs.
who's playing. Yeah. Like some teams are completely different and the coaching staffs are different. And I just think they're impossible to predict these days.
I agree. Lee on YouTube says, "Hey guys, are we going to get any number one wide receivers in the portal?" Kind of frustrating.
One-ish.
We're going to talk about the transfer portal, but not specifically about a player that Penn State got at the wide receiver position because they haven't got one at the wide receiver position yet. But welcome into the show, everybody. Going to talk about Manny Diaz tonight. Going to talk about the transfer portal commit. Going to talk about Riley Thompson, the punter, Peach Bowl Conference, Theo Johnson, and Chop Robinson, and then finish a little bit of recruiting. So that's the kind of game plan tonight. Yeah. Manny Diaz, Sean, took the Duke head coaching job. I believe it was down to Manny Diaz, Jim Knowles, and Tony Gibson. Jim Knowles, defense coordinator at Ohio State, and Gibson at NC State, whom we might talk about more in a second. But Manny Diaz gets a job. Saw he was already at a Duke basketball game the other night, which that didn't take any time. And he's gone. And I'm a little sad. I really, Sean, like talking about. Oh, that's gonna be a problem. I'll fix that in a second. Talking about Manny Diaz leaving, were you surprised by this? Do you think maybe he should have waited for a better gig? What are your thoughts?
I was a little surprised. I think I told you guys before I didn't think he would take this job, and he did. So my predictions aren't always spot on, but it's not as bad of a job as I think maybe even I gave it credit or I thought it was. Like if you look at Duke before David Cutcliffe and after, I mean, they win 7 or 8 games semi-consistently. And the thing with the job like Duke is I think that's going to be their ceiling. I think there are certain places that you could only get that, but it's not like Vanderbilt. In the past, 20 years ago, yeah, you could say that it was like the Vanderbilt job, but it's not really like that. But I do think he probably could have held out for a better job, but you just don't know what goes into these decisions. Maybe Manny wanted to go to warmer weather. Maybe it was as simple as that. Maybe he just wanted to be the head guy. Maybe he really liked Raleigh. Maybe he doesn't want a big high profile job. Like that is possible. And maybe he feels for himself that it was best for his career to go be a defensive coordinator for a couple of years after, what happened at Miami. And then don't take a huge job. And maybe kind of get his footing, see what happens at Duke. Maybe he really likes Duke and wants to stay there forever. Maybe he keeps his options open for a few years. So, yeah, I was sad to see him go, but, we wish him nothing but the best. And everything seems to be on good terms between him and Penn State's program. He said some very nice things about James Franklin on Twitter and vice versa. James Franklin with Manny. So, yeah, we're going to miss him. He's a great coach. He, best defense coordinator I've seen at Penn State. We've seen some good ones, so he will be missed.
I think he has to do well at Duke from a head coaching perspective. And I think there is probably some stigma there that maybe some people weren't going to hire him until he had a track record of being successful as a head coach. Maybe he wasn't going to land that job because people already are kind of counting him out from maybe that top tier job. But I also think if, you got to kind of bet on yourself there. There's a chance if he comes back for another year at Penn State, maybe he doesn't think the defense is going to be as good. But I think the more you hold out, the better job you can get. See what Venables was able to do when he landed the Oklahoma job. But going Manny Diaz's route is also a fine way to do things. Prove yourself. The expectations, I know they just had a really good year, but the expectations aren't going to be incredibly high at Duke. They're always going to be behind basketball. So you kind of have a little bit more wiggle room there. I would honestly say if it wasn't for Florida State's reemergence, the Duke job would be a great job because really with Clemson down, you don't have that many juggernauts that you're battling against. And we don't know where Florida State's going to be. You're right. So I'll be interested to see how long he's there. I don't think that's his final destination, but I do think it's a good landing spot in the sense of it's a good place for him to learn how to be a head coach. He never got a fair shot at Miami. Going to Duke will give him time, as much as there is time nowadays in college football, and opportunities for him to grow as a head coach. And honestly, you can only do so much as a defensive coordinator as far as head coach growing. You got to just be in that position, and you gotta have to just figure it out. And sometimes I don't think maybe people realize that with James Franklin, that he did some growing at Vanderbilt, but he very much was still learning and growing on the job as a head coach, even at Penn State.
Yeah, I think the 2014 Northwestern game. And he hasn't had a game like that, but that's the kind of stuff that you learn. I've heard from University of Miami fans, and I think they're right, that Manny Diaz was defense coordinator at Miami before he took the head coaching job. They said he should have taken the Temple job because that would have given him that opportunity that you alluded to learn how to be a head coach. And we've seen Al Golden, although didn't work out at Miami, but had success at Temple. And we saw Matt Rule, who was very successful at Temple and has been successful everywhere in college that he's ever been. So I kind of think Manny should have taken that Temple job when he was offered it. I think he accepted it, and then the Miami job opened back up, and he ended up taking the Miami job before he ever coached at Temple. So that probably would have been best for his career, but you learn a lot from failing, and people have this thing against coaches who have failed before, that, we're not going to hire some retread. Well, I kind of think that's flawed logic. Like, I've seen, think of all the great coaches that have been fired. Bill Belichick got fired. Pete Carroll was fired twice in the NFL, and then he went to USC. Like, guys, it doesn't mean your career's over if you get fired. I think that's just a misconception people have. And then he went and coached under a really good coach at James Franklin, who had a great culture, has built a program, and he probably learned a ton from James Franklin. I'd be, if he's a fool if he hasn't learned anything from James Franklin. I don't think Manny's a fool. So I think he learned a ton in the last 2 years. I think he learned a lot from Miami. I think he's going to do good things at Duke, and I'm truly excited for him because he did so much good here, and I think he's going to be successful wherever he goes.
Yeah. I'm curious, Sean, like who he brings in as his offensive coordinator, and does he plan on calling the defense? I don't know if they've come out with that information or not yet. I'm guessing he probably does. I think if I remember correctly, and I could be completely off base here, I think he had a defensive coordinator. It was either one or the other. Like when he was at Miami, I think he either started with a defensive coordinator, and then after the first year, he took over play calling. I think that's what happened. because they weren't very good his first year. And I think he went back to calling the defense the second year. But either way, he did call the plays, I think, for 1 year, and 1 year he didn't, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But even if you think about being the head coach, it's very hard, especially in college, to call the plays and be the head guy.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien did it at Penn State with some success, but generally it's a hard thing to do. And I remind everybody, Neil O'Brien years we went 8-4 and 7-5. So if you're trying to, if you have aspirations to win a conference title, it kind of puts you in a bind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk more about Penn State and what it means for Penn State. Obviously, no defensive coordinator. I don't believe Franklin has officially said who's going to be the interim defensive coordinator for the Peach Bowl. Anthony Poindexter was the interim defensive coordinator when Brent Pry left for the Outback Bowl. So that's kind of who we kind of assume will be the interim. But we don't know that for sure yet. And then Penn State's got to find a permanent defensive coordinator. And Poindexter is definitely on that list. But there's other people out there. And Shawn, I guess, do you feel like they're going to stay internal, or do you think they're going to go out there and get somebody? And I feel like maybe it's a little bit different than when they went and just got Andy Kudlnicki, because we expected them to go external. We didn't really think Sider or Howe were necessarily ready for that. But Anthony Poindexter all but had the Virginia job in the bag. And so he's showing that kind of ability to kind of climb in the coaching ranks already. And so you would think he would want that DC job if possible.
Yeah, he's going to be under consideration. I think he has to be. And I think this is a tougher one to call than the offensive coordinator job. And the OC job, I went back and made sure we didn't say his name. Neither of us got the offensive coordinator right. But I had heard, hey, Kansas has a great offensive coordinator. So his name had been put out there by people like this one. And there have been names put out there, but it's just hard to get a read. And I think a lot of it has to do with the reason you said. We have a strong in-house candidate. And I just don't think, and no disrespect to Ty Howell or Jaywan Sider, I just don't think they were super strong in-house candidates. Poindexter has play calling experience. He did at UConn. Not much success, but I would remind you, UConn, the players up there are not Penn State quality players. So it's a whole different deal. It was also like 7 years ago the last time he called plays. So a lot has happened in that time. And I think he's a very talented coach. And I think he gives James Franklin a lot to think about. My hunch, though, is that they go outside. That's my hunch. And the reason I say that is supposedly Penn State has quite a bit of money to work with now that they didn't previously have. And we've seen James Franklin go in-house before with Brent Pry after Bob Shoop, and with Ricky Ronnie after Joe Moorhead. But that's before he got the pool of money for coordinators and position coaches. So I have a hunch he's going to go outside, but that's no guarantee. And I think if Dex blows him away in the interview, very good chance Poindexter gets the job.
It's interesting because, they eventually decided to choose Deion Barnes for defensive line, but they didn't just give it to him right away. And it sounds like they interviewed other people. And so I'm just curious if that's going to kind of go on those same lines, that timeline is going to be kind of the same there. And maybe we don't expect to see a decision right off the bat. But also, Shawn, we're 10 days away from signing day, and you would kind of like to have that wrapped up before then, just so they can recruit those guys a little bit if they decide to go out of the house. So I don't know. I think Poindexter has a chance. I guess my concern, or my question really, is what kind of defense does James Franklin want to bring in? You saw how effective Manny Diaz was. There's really not that many people like Manny Diaz. There's one name that we can talk about in a second, but a lot of these guys have different styles. And how effective Manny Diaz's style was, do you really go away from that?
Couple things. I think there's a strong argument to be made that you don't, because we had, in my mind, the best defense in the country this year. So there's a good argument to be said, just promote Dex. But how much of that has to do with Manny being the guy, being the maestro, if you will? Like, it's a whole different, like, you could say, well, we're just going to run the same defense that we ran with Manny Diaz. Okay. But like in game and preparation, that's really where Manny made his magic, knowing when to call blitzes, knowing what blitzes to call. Like, that's what made Manny Manny. And that's something that we really won't know that Dex has until the season starts. So I'm not doubting him or anything, but that's what Manny Diaz brings. Also, this. When you run a hyper-aggressive defense like Penn State's had the past couple of years, that puts a ton of pressure on your cornerbacks. And Penn State was very fortunate to have Joey Porter Jr. last season, who's been killing it with the Steelers, Kalen King, who's going to be in the NFL, Johnny Dixon, who's going to be in the NFL, and Daquan Hardy, who I think is going to be in the NFL. So we've had all these studs at corner. So James Franklin might look at that and say, we might have to tweak things a little bit on defense. So that also factors in. So I don't think it's 100% necessary to run the same exact defense that we ran, because frankly, I don't think we could next year.
Yeah. And that's a fair point. I mean, we talked about this a lot with the offense and how you have to kind of use the guys you have to the best of their abilities. But, yeah, I think having the amount of athletes they possess at the defensive back position and obviously at the defensive end position, it made sense to give those guys a chance to be athletes on the outside and let your guys feast at the defensive end position. So I'd be curious there what they end up deciding, what kind of scheme they want. Obviously, I like Manny Diaz's version better than Brent Pry's version. Brent Pry had some good defenses, but it was literally fun to watch the defense, especially this year, more than the offense. And that's not always the case. Even like good defenses aren't necessarily fun to watch. Like Iowa's defense this year, like, yeah, they were good, but they weren't explosive. And that's, again, very different, big difference in how Phil Parker runs his defense versus Manny Diaz runs his defense. Both effective, but it was literally fun to watch. And I enjoy watching Manny Diaz's style more. Everybody claims that they have aggressive style, attacking defense, but Manny Diaz kind of put that to a new level there. That to me, if someone decides that they have an attacking or an aggressive defense, that is now my expectation. No one else is allowed to use that phrasing unless it's like Manny Diaz's.
Yeah, 100%. And I would always prefer an aggressive, in-your-face defense, and rather than what Penn State has had for, I don't know, the first 40 years before Manny Diaz was here, kind of a bend but don't break style defense. And we've had fantastic defenses here. We won national championships with those style defenses. But I would rather have a defense where you can get burned for 30 yards, but then you go sack the quarterback and it's 2nd and 16. And then that they have to go make a play, incompletion, all of a sudden it's 3rd and 16, and you're able to rush the quarterback and you get a strip sack. That's like the style defense that I like to watch. And that and I hope we have it. I hope we have that sort of defense. Now, I won't be able to do everything we did with this defense that we had this past year, but that's the kind of style I would like to see personally. And really, I think that's a style Franklin's going to go for. Maybe not quite as aggressive as we were this year, but we do have a ton of athletes. And think of a guy like Odafe Owe. I think he would be phenomenal in this defense.
Yeah.
I just think he was in the wrong
Micah
scheme.
Parsons.
And it's not, Micah Parsons. I think he would be even better than he was here. If we had a defense like this, and no shade on Pry or anything, I really like Brent Pry, but they weren't exactly scheme fits.
Yeah. But also, you have to play more of a Brent Pry style defense when you don't have necessarily as many athletes. Now, Manny Diaz, yes, Brent Pry had Owe. He did have Micah Parsons, but their backups weren't necessarily to that same level that could do those same things. Manny Diaz has wave number 1, and then wave number 2 came in, and they were able to do the same thing. So you can run that style. You can have those backups come in and perform at a similar level. Brent Pry really didn't have that. There's a pretty substantial drop-off, especially early on in his tenure at Penn State. And that limits you a little bit more.
And look at the corners he was working with, too. I mean, we had Trent Gordon playing a lot of time and Tree Castro Fields. That's way different than Johnny Dixon and Kalen King. They're entirely it's entirely different. And it limits a little bit how aggressive you could be, for sure.
Yeah, and the safety play too.
The
safety play in the last 4 years has really, really gone up.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
Marcus Allen, a good player, but he ended up with 1 turnover in his entire career at Penn State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and everybody loves Marcus Allen, but he was very average in pass coverage. I mean, that's just the way it is. He was great in run support, but he was a limited player.
Right. Okay, so who, based off of what you've just said, do you want Penn State to go after? And also, I guess, who do you think they're going to go after?
So a guy that's right at the top of my list, and as soon as I saw Manny was going, I really wanted Joe Harasmiak I definitely butchered the name, out at Rutgers. I love the way they play defense. I think they play a style that could fit our guys. And, coached under, he actually came from Minnesota, where he was successful as well. And then this year with Greg Schiano, I think he makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Poindexter's a candidate. A name that's a little off, but I could see it. I wouldn't be unhappy with is Tom Allen, a guy that we've talked about a ton on here. He made a lot of chicken salad with some chicken poop, and I think if you give him better ingredients, he might be able to make chicken marsala. So
I can go over some of that right now.
Yeah, me too. So I think if you give him the guys, he can make it work. And I think he'd be a good fit in this locker room. I think I could see him fitting in really well with these coaches and with the players. So those are the 3 guys that really stick out to me. I know you've mentioned Gibson from NC State before. I think that's a good name too. So I know who's the guy from Wisconsin who always
Leonard.
Yeah, he always comes up. But
I don't think he's still at Leonard, right? I think he's at Illinois now.
Yeah, I think he is too. I saw his name pop up a couple of times. Runs a 3-4. I just don't think Franklin wants to go to a 3-4 defense. I just don't think it's his preferred style, and I don't really think we got the guys necessarily.
No, I don't want to take off. I don't want to take. First of all,
you don't even have a true nose tackle.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You don't really have the guy to play. If you have a Vita Vea out there, okay.
Yeah, sure.
But you don't have that. And then again, linebacker depth is good, but not amazing. And do you put both Kobe King and Tyler Elliston out there at the mics?
Yeah,
Do you then make Adisa Isaac play more in space? I don't know what you do, and then you bump maybe Abdul Carter inside one. I don't know, but I don't like it. So,
yeah, I don't think that this defense is built to be the guys that we have are built to be 4-3 guys. So I can't see a 3-4 guy coming in.
Yeah,
you said, maybe if we had not better personnel that fit that, but I think it would be classic square in a circle. Square. I always say that wrong.
It's hard to say.
Square-
Square peg in a round circle, or
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that you know what I mean.
Yep, I'm with you. I wanted to mention two other guys and kind of get your thoughts on them. Blake Baker, defense coordinator at Missouri, was the GA with Manny Diaz at Texas, Louisiana Tech, and Miami. So runs a similar scheme. Missouri didn't have what I would call an amazing defense, but runs similar. If they want to go that route, if they want to keep it to, he'd be a Power 5 defensive coordinator. And you kind of keep what, at least parts of what Manny Diaz already had.
Yeah, I'd have to go and look back and see what Missouri did. But sure. I don't think it would be a bad hire. Like you said, familiarity with the scheme. But at that point, Corey, wouldn't you just go with Dex?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he has play calling experience over Poindexter. And I know Dex was at UConn, but that was UConn and it was a long time ago. So he's coached in the SEC. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think I'd be unhappy with it.
They were top 40 in total defense. I was just going to see if I can find, just curious here. And they were number 12 in turnover margin.
It's got a fun name.
Double B.
Blake Baker.
Yeah, I wanted to
Baker.
mention him. And then I actually have one more person. Then we're going to answer Robert Parker's question on YouTube. The other person I wanted to mention, first of all, you mentioned Tom Allen. I just wanted to say, I don't know if I love that. I love him. I don't know if I love that, but I do love him. But the other person I wanted to mention was Zach Arnett, was, I guess, the Mississippi State coach for a little bit, but not too much. Was the defensive coordinator before that at Mississippi State, was the defensive coordinator at San Diego State before that. Is there a fit there at all? Or have you heard anything about that?
I've seen the name. I've seen the name come up. Like you said, he was with Mississippi State. Was with who's the coach who passed away? Mike Leach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's his defensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of it is the fit and everything like that. But like you said, head coaching experience, and I think that's something that James Franklin likes, and he's done well with. See Joe Moorhead and Manny Diaz. I think he's comfortable having another guy who's, you know, been in the big seat before, and having them there to bounce ideas off of. So, yeah, I'd have to go and review how Mississippi State did. But I know they weren't very good this year, but how he did with Mike Leach.
Right. Let's answer Robert Parker's question. He asked, do you think being a linebacker coach matters in decision? Seems to trend towards I can't see that word for some reason. He says matters. Oh, okay. So that was the end of the question. Do you think a linebacker coach matters in the decision? And then it seems to be the trend. I'm sorry, I can't read. And then he says, love the guy from NC State, but not sure it's doable. So he loves Tony Gibson there. Sorry, Robert, I kind of butchered your question because I can't read at anything higher than a 5th grade level. Linebacker coach, does that matter, Sean?
Sure, of course. You know, every coach, coaching matters immensely in college football. Now, could you make things work? Sure. Like Stacy Collins is low key the outside linebackers coach, and it feels like that never gets talked about. So, could we just promote him to be the linebackers coach? Yeah, of course. Our buddy Mike had the idea of promoting Dex, make Dan Connor the linebackers coach, which isn't a bad idea. Dan Connor's here, for those of you who don't know. He's an analyst, so that could be something that I see happen. But like I said, you could be a little flexible, I think, with that. I mean, we still don't know who our quarterbacks coach is. So there's that. You're always coaching staffs tend to slide guys around and find roles for them. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. See David Corley, our former receivers coach.
Right. Yeah, you said everything I wanted to say there. You mentioned Dan Connor. You mentioned that we still don't have a quarterbacks coach officially. So yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of those nuances definitely need to be figured out. You have a lot of guys that have a lot of experience, so you can kind of play around a little bit with that and probably be okay. The Stacey Collins one is actually a pretty good idea, Sean. I like that a lot. Want to pause for just 1 second and say thank you to Mercury for grabbing Sean and I our very own We Are Feeling Peachy shirts. I can show all of that. There we go. We're matching today. Shout out to State Media for getting these made for us. And well, not just for us, but for you guys as well. So make sure to go grab your own shirt in the Mercury store. And very comfortable. Just got it tonight, but you should definitely check it out. Probably the best thing that State Media / Mercury has done since acquiring us onto their company.
That was the biggest thing. But yes, and yeah, I even like little football inside the peach. So it's a cool shirt. Definitely a fan. So, and Penn State better win, so I can wear it forever.
Yeah, it's not as good of a shirt if they lose, I guess.
And then I just feel defeated.
Robert Parker says the last two defensive coordinators have specialized with linebackers, and I think that's usually the case as it is. I think you kind of want that because you want your quarterback of the defense to be the linebacker, and so you kind of want them to be taught by the guy whose philosophy it is. So that's why I think it usually makes as much, the most sense to do it that way. But, we'll have to kind of wait and see there. Just FYI, make sure you are still, I think only like DA Adam tweeted at Mercury or at Hardcore PSUFB about getting us our own merch. You guys have to do better than that. If you want us to have our own merch, you need to burn the place down as far as ammunition and yelling and screaming and shouting for Hardcore PSUFB merch. So just blow them up, blow their DMs up, blow our DMs up. Every time we get a message or a DM or anything related to it, I send it over to management. First thing I do. Doesn't matter the time of the day, I just send it over to them. So just keep that up.
You got to let the suits know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Transfer portal time, Sean. Penn State lands an offensive tackle in the transfer portal. 3-star offensive tackle, Alan Herron. 2 years of eligibility left. He's 6'5", 310. He's a monster. I don't know if you watched any of the Shorter film yet. He's from Shorter University, which, by the way, there's a Shorter college. So make sure you just say Shorter University. There's a Shorter college and a Shorter university. I don't know which one's actually shorter.
And Justin Shorter.
And then you have Justin Shorter. So just all sorts of Shorters. Big dude. I mean, if you watch the film, he is a man amongst boys. He's actually not from, he's from College Park, Georgia, which is not near Maryland, if you were curious. It's just outside of Atlanta. It's actually right next to the Atlanta International Airport. Not too far from where I used to live. Not close, but not too far. Shout out to For the Bloggy, because For the Bloggy was tweeting at us when Penn State offered him, or maybe when he came up for a visit. For the Bloggy doesn't seem to be the biggest fan based off of the film that they have watched. But I guess my early indicators are saying that this guy, they're hoping to be kind of a blank canvas as far as what he's bringing in. We talk about this all the time. Offensive tackles are the hardest position probably to recruit just in general, but also coming out of the transfer portal. We've seen guys that are supposed to be surefire transfer portal additions for other teams, and it just not really turn out great for them. And so it's very hard to put a label on this as far as good or bad pickup, but it's an inspiring one. It's one that makes you feel good just because Penn State went out and got a guy that a lot of other people wanted. He visited Texas Tech. Clemson had offered, so he had some he had some serious interests across, important Power 5 schools, and Penn State was able to go get him. Now, he has 2 years of eligibility. He also can still redshirt, so potentially 3 years still at Penn State. I think there's going to be more of a development here. I don't think he's a sure thing to fill in at one of the offensive tackle spots. I think he might be able to compete, but my hunch is that you're looking more at a 2025 real impact guy versus a 2024 real impact guy, Sean.
That's generally my field too. I had mentioned actually a couple shows ago that you really don't want linemen from lower levels. And then we just got a lineman from a lower level. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, oh, I'm thrilled and jumping for joy. But am I going to give him a chance? Of course. You have to. Obviously, the staff felt good enough in their evaluation to think he could play here. So that's encouraging. Like Cory said, it's not like we're the only team that offered him. So that's also nice. And he was very good at his level. So I think you have to give him a chance. It's definitely there's definitely size to work with. A guy like that, you just wonder about footwork, athleticism, and how that will translate at this level when you're not just bigger than everybody. And it's kind of like you mentioned too, it's kind of like getting an offensive tackle out of high school. Like, we have had so many offensive tackle busts at Penn State. Like, we think we have a long list of quarterback busts. Like, the list of offensive line busts is like 5 times as long. So you don't really know who's going to develop. And then we had a guy like John Urschel, who was a 3-star guy, a late add in the class, and he ends up being an NFL player. So you don't know how he's going to develop. I agree with you. I think I'd be surprised if he saw the field in a huge way this year, but you never know. And I probably prefer him to sit this year and redshirt based on what I've seen. I would remind everybody we're still after I forget his first name, Bazantis from down at Texas A&M, but he has a lot of teams after him. Ohio State's in the mix, Michigan, LSU. Like, these are teams that are very good and they have a lot of money. He's from Jersey, so we have a shot. And that's the offensive tackle recruit if we're going to get that's going to play a lot this year.
I guess my next kind of question off of that, Sean, is what does this say about how Penn State feels in the offensive line room as far as maybe the developmental guys at the offensive tackle position? Is this maybe, okay, we're not exactly sure how we feel about, for a little bit there, Penn State was rolling potentially with 4 offensive tackles they felt good about because they thought maybe Landon Tangwall would be able to bounce outside if needed. You don't necessarily have any sort of confidence at this point for next year's offensive tackles because you're most likely losing both of them. Drew Shelton, thankfully, has been promising, but you still don't really know quite yet. Be interested, honestly, if maybe Shelton bounces back to right tackle versus left tackle. We don't know even what side he's going to play on yet. We've definitely felt more comfortable at left tackle originally than right tackle, but we'll have to see there. But where does Penn State feel they're at with maybe the Burkmeyers, the Javen Williams, the Chimney Onos of the world, where do they want to bump some of those guys inside? Is Ono not quite there yet? And Ono, kind of in a similar camp, when they first got him, almost a year ago, they all thought like he needed some time to develop. And so maybe he's just not quite there yet, which is fine. But you want a guy maybe still to be a Band-Aid fix for just next year, like the one you just mentioned, and then get a guy like Heron who can maybe help out in 2025. But do you feel maybe that there's some question mark still looming in that offensive line room right now?
Yeah, and I think there will be when really anytime you're dealing with freshman offensive linemen because you just don't know how they're going to develop. Also, I think it says something about Caden Wallace. Caden Wallace could come back next year. I think if we're going after 2 offensive tackles in the portal, it's probably a good indication he's going to depart. And can't really blame him. He's been here a long, long time now. So I can't really blame him for that. We actually, if you haven't seen the Instagram and YouTube reel, check it out. We talk about Caden Wallace. It's on the State Media PSU page. So Caden Wallace actually gave us a nice little shout out on Instagram in the comment section. So you might want to check that out. But yeah, I think it's a good indication that we kind of penciled Olu in for the draft. Caden Wallace probably goes too. So it's a combination of both. It doesn't surprise me that we're hitting offensive tackle. And yeah, I would really love to get the kid from Texas A&M because that kid's a stud. He was a freshman All-American.
Yeah. I'd be kind of curious where they go there. Let's move away from offensive linemen. Lee started off the night right off the bat asking about, hey, what's up with wide receiver? Can we get the number 1 guy? Let me just preface this by saying, I think we said this last year, so probably repeating myself a little bit. Not a lot of number 1 guys just decide to go into the transfer portal. Like true surefire number 1 guys don't just disappear and want to go somewhere else because they're the number 1 guy already. So, and maybe they were a number 1 guy at a smaller school, say a Dante Cephas, but then you have to go and see if you have to kind of predict whether or not they're going to be able to have that same production at a higher level. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is there's no sure thing when it comes to wide receiver recruiting when you're trying to find a number 1 guy. There's no sure thing about it. So you can look in the transfer portal, and honestly, Sean, maybe you feel better about this. I don't know how many great number 1 wide receivers are out there right now where you're like, yep, you need to 100% go get that guy because he's going to be a huge, like last year even, Keon Coleman, who went to Florida State. I can't remember his first name, but Mitchell, who left Georgia and went to Texas. I'm trying to think if was Worthy originally at UNC that went to Texas, or is he always at Texas?
I don't know.
He might have always been there, but there's just not that many. Obviously, Addison 2 years ago when he went to USC, but otherwise, like there's guys that contribute, but don't make a huge big difference. I mean, think about like what Mitch Tinsley did 2 years ago, and that's probably like what your expectation should be for a transfer portal receiver. Like a guy like Mitch Tinsley who brings a veteran presence, who had shown true production in mass quantities at a previous school, comes in, wins a couple 50-50 balls, and maybe puts up 5 touchdowns. That's probably what your expectation should be. There's not that many Keon Colemans out there. The Keon Coleman apple tree only blossoms, ever so often.
Right now, no, I don't see any great wide receivers in the portal. Believe me, I checked. I think the number 1 guy, according to 24/7 Sports, is a guy from Vanderbilt. So, I mean, if he's so good, why did he start his career at Vanderbilt? One has to imagine. And it's not that there are no good receivers in there. Jalen Lucas was just on campus. Our old pal, Julian Fleming, he's been around campus as well. This is public knowledge. So I don't know for sure if he was saying Mr. Brightside at the first, but that is a Twitter rumor. So I don't know if it's true. But there are good receivers out there. But is there like you mentioned, Keon Coleman, is there a Jamison Williams from a few years ago? Not that I see. But they take a guy like Fleming, who was behind all those good receivers at Ohio State. Maybe all he needs is to be the guy or one of the top 2 guys. Maybe that's all he needs. So there are good receivers out there, but I agree with you. I don't see a game changer out there, which is unfortunate. Although I always liked Jalen Lucas. I think both of the preview shows that we've had together, I made it a point to talk about Jalen Lucas because he's such an explosive player. So I would love to bring him in.
Yeah, and I think that's a good one. Like you're trying to find someone who can, in my opinion, complement, and which is probably not what everybody wants to hear, right? But my honest belief is if you bring in a guy like Jalen Lucas, who's a burner, and not that they don't already have one in Amari Evans, who I thought should get the ball more, but I really think you have guys that you can win with, in my opinion, just because you have a running game that is going to demand attention, in my opinion. So, and my biggest knock on Mike Yurcich was that he did not set up the pass with the run game. The passing plays when they went play action did not look like the run game. And because it didn't look like it, nobody really bought on it. And nobody buys on it, you're not helping your receivers. I'm not, Penn State doesn't have Ohio State's wide receivers that can go just win all the time. But they're not going to out of the transfer portal. Like that's just never going to happen. You're never going to be able to have that level of talent. And other teams find ways to win and be explosive on offense without having Ohio State wide receivers. So I don't think putting it all on having to get a number one wide receiver is true, especially when you have two great running backs. You just need to find ways to scheme them open and utilize their strengths. And I think an Amari Evans and a Jalen Lucas, especially with the run game you have, can be very effective. I think Keandre Lambert-Smith playing some more in the slot can be effective at times. I think Dante Cephas can be a very effective weapon for you. Hell, I think Malik McClain can be an effective weapon for you. I know people are ready to move on and you got to get at least two wide receivers in a transfer portal. Look, the transfer portal has been open for a week now, Sean, and only Christian Driver has entered. So what does that say about how they feel and where they where they're going to be? Maybe they decide to wait until the spring. I don't know, but I'm not. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not terrified of only getting one wide receiver out of the transfer portal and that guy not necessarily being. Well, first of all, I don't know how many studs are out there not being a stud. Do you go get a Keon Coleman if he's there? Sure. But I think it's just more important that we utilize the guys we have correctly. And I don't think it's going to matter if you don't do that anyway.
Or Canelo Stokes. Let's make the most of the guys we have. And, I think you have to bring a couple guys in. I am just not impressed at all with this receiver room. And I have a feeling Keandre Lambert-Smith, I think he's going to go. It's just a gut feeling I have that he's going to either go to the NFL or hit the portal. Just a feeling. So, especially in that case, then I think you definitely need two. And I would get two anyway, because if those receivers couldn't get on the field this year, that's very alarming to me. And maybe we could blame Yurcich, and maybe it was all him, maybe. But I'm just not. I don't think anybody really impressed me. That doesn't mean quit on them. I think a guy like Malik McClain, for example, yeah, he has a ton of talent. When you're tall and you can run, yeah, you could play. I think we mentioned Zaid Blacknell last week. Zaid Blacknell was not a good route runner. But what could he do? He could catch the ball, and he could run. And he had pretty good size. And if you could do that, a good offensive coordinator has to be able to find a way to get you the ball. And Joe Moorhead always found a way to get Zaid Blacknell the ball. And I think you have to do similar things with a guy like Malik McClain, with a guy like Dante Cephas, who do have ability, but they're just not the most polished guys in the world, and they do have shortcomings. So I think you got to do both. And I think a guy like Andy Kotelnicki when you look at what he had to work with at Kansas, it was much less than what we have at Penn State before we bring any transfers in. So, but at the same time, we're trying to win national championships. We're not trying to just go 8-4, 9-3 like a team like Kansas is.
Right, good point. And Lee says can't convince me that all the issues were on the offensive coordinator. 100% agree, and that's not what I'm trying to say, right? Like, it's not all Mike Yurcich's fault. It was, the Nick Singleton not finding the hole sometimes. It was sometimes the wide receivers not getting open consistently or running the right routes. It was Drew Aller not pulling the trigger sometimes. All those things 100% played into it. But you don't make yourself easy on it when you don't run, like, you just don't really cater to the strengths of the offense. And that was the running game and the tight ends. And we didn't see that nearly enough at times. And we didn't see really anything. I mean, go back to the Ohio State game. They didn't even go under center. And we've talked about how going under center and running from under center and then going play action from under center and how effective that can be. I think they only went under center once in Ohio State, and that was to run the trick play. And I think they only went under center a couple times against Indiana, but they never ran from under center against Indiana. They only ran the play action pass. It's like, well, if you don't ever run it out of under center, then everyone knows it's coming. Like, I love that play action pass, but you got to run it out of that sometimes. Otherwise, everybody knows it. So that's not rocket science. But I would personally like to see Julian Fleming come. Just get back to the conversation. I would, if you get Fleming and Lucas, I think that's pretty solid. I don't think that's like an A grade, but I think that's a solid B. And I think that would it settle Sean's nerves? Probably not. But I think you would say okay with that. You could say okay.
That's not bad. Andre Green was on campus too. Transfer from North Carolina. I wanted to mention that. Yeah,
and that was the guy Lee said. Lee was mad about that guy. He said he only had 5 catches in 2 years. Yeah. He's not a fan.
Yeah, he's a guy we recruited, and I really liked him when we were recruiting him a few years ago, but he just hasn't panned out at North Carolina. So I just kind of figured we already have Malik McClain here that's, has some talent, but he has to prove himself a bit. So we already have a guy like that here. Why are we bringing another guy like that in? Right. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you want somebody to have some production.
Yeah, exactly. I want some proven guys. Julian Fleming, I know he hasn't been what he was built to be at Ohio State, but like, he's a good player. Like, look at his stats. Like, when they throw him the ball, he catches the ball. He gets open. So he does make somewhat the most of his opportunities. And Jalen Lucas, like, he's a baller. I mean, you can't teach speed. And as long as you're not a guy like Devon Mumu Smith, who trips over his own feet, like, if you could run, you could play. And I think that's what we have with a guy like Jalen Lucas, and he's a proven commodity, especially in the return game. The return game is going to be very, very exciting if we get Jalen Lucas.
Yeah, and again, you're thinking, I don't know, like, you feel good about Nick Singleton, but if you could maybe give him some rest and get someone else out there, and
sure,
punt returner has been a little bit of a adventure, sometimes good, sometimes bad. You feel maybe a little bit better there too. So just to recap a little bit, Penn State still probably needs a corner, still probably needs a defensive lineman, still probably needs at least one, maybe 2 wide receivers. And we think maybe one more offensive tackle. Is that, will you kind of agree there?
I do. Yeah, I would like to see an upgraded defense, see one defensive tackle and probably one corner. And then I would prefer 2 receivers and another tackle. Yeah, you named everything that I want. Plus, if we have room for a luxury guy like a Jay Sean Barnum, yeah, I think you always find room for a guy like that.
Gotcha. Okay, I wanted to go now to, and I really think we should have led with this, but probably other people wouldn't agree. Riley Thompson, the punter. Alex Paqueta, former Penn State punter, went to the transfer portal at the beginning of last week. We hoped that was because Riley Thompson was approved for his for an extended eligibility. We thought maybe for an additional year, but boom, wowzer, we get 2 more years. So Riley Thompson, 2 more years of eligibility. Penn State doesn't necessarily need a punter for 2 more years. That's big time. One question mark that we had going into the offseason answered, which is big time, Sean.
Yeah, I don't even know the rules anymore with eligibility and everything, because like you said, we were just happy to get him for 1 year, and we get him for 2. I know he's from the former land of Mr. Lestochi, Australia. And I think that had some role in it, because there was a year where he was in college, but he could have been in high school or something crazy like that. Plus the COVID year factors in, and then we have 2 years. I don't know. But point is, we have a good punter for 2 years. Also, as we alluded to a little bit at the time, it makes sense why Alex Paqueta's gone. So it'll be nice to have Mr. Thompson and his services back for 2 years.
Right. No. It's amazing, right? Because it was a question mark going into the season, and now it seems like a huge win to have him back for 2 more years. So what I like about Thompson so much too is his ability to punt it both ways and to be effective kind of both ways. I think that makes him a little bit more of a weapon in that regard. He had, what game would that have been? Was it the Rutgers game? I think it was the Rutgers game where he had Penn State was backed up and he had that massive punt right before the end of the half. And I think Rutgers only ended up getting 3 points, but they started at the 40-yard line instead of, maybe the 30, Penn State's 30. So just little punts like that I'll remember. He's not like the most powerful punter in the world, but he's fairly consistent, and he can continue to develop across the entire season. I think he played his best football his last 6 games.
He's good at knocking it off defenders too and causing muffs. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it's something he tends to do. And like you said, like, I don't remember Shank at all this year, which was a personal concern, nothing against him, that I had, because I was like, what are we going to have here? And, we're so accustomed to having good punting here, and he just continues to carry the torch. So it's definitely a benefit, and he was an asset in our biggest games this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so Peach Bowl press conference today. Penn State hosted the Peach Bowl people, the Peachy people, if you will. And Pat Kraft, most importantly, talked about wanting to get a second Chick-fil-A in State College, which, Sean, I don't know how you feel about Chick-fil-A, but I'm a pretty big fan. Haven't had it in State College since I moved back, actually, which I'm not sure why that's been the case, but maybe I need to go get Chick-fil-A at some point this week now.
If you come up here, I could get you some. It would be my pleasure.
Be your pleasure. So we vouch for that. And most importantly, 2 things came out of this for me, Sean. It was a pretty bland press conference as far as like asking James Franklin questions. 2 things, though. Number 1, Penn State has a chance to win and be the only team to win all New Year's Six bowls, which obviously they weren't all considered New Year's Six bowls at the time. But he has a chance to do that. Or say he, but they have a chance to do that. And then Patrick Kraft says that Penn State is the best head coach in football. And he truly believes that. Sean, do you believe that?
No, but we'll disagree.
Yeah. Sean, do me a favor and tilt your camera down just a smidgen for me.
Sure.
What, in your opinion, came out of this that you were happy about, or what stood out to you?
Yeah. Like you said, just I think anytime that there's a press conference and there's no news, like nothing that notable, it's something. I think it's something like what Kraft said. It kind of underscores the alignment that we have from the head on down, and how much of it is for the cameras and how much of it's real. I think it's a legitimate question, but I do know that Kraft and Franklin, they sat together on the team plane for every game, at least last season. I don't know if they still continue to do that. And it seems that Franklin has really gotten whatever he's wanted from Kraft. So, like I said, I don't think there was any real meaty news, but yeah. I might have missed it, but did Franklin say anything about the defensive coordinator?
He just said that they're looking into coach speak. There wasn't much really.
I figured that's what he gave us.
Yeah,
which is normal for this.
Yeah, there wasn't much there. Talked a little bit about Theo Johnson, which we're going to talk about in a second, but there really wasn't a whole lot to the kind of the football aspect of it. There was some things about like what it meant. Peach Bowl guy talked about how they've given away more money to charity than any other bowl, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I didn't know. I think Penn State, if they win, end up getting $6 million from it or something like that, which is insane. But there was just some other little tidbits there, but
will any of it pay my tuition?
Probably not. You have to suck that one up, I think, on your own. Unless you win the Peach Bowl, I guess.
Maybe I could get on the team. I know
with
how to chip.
Your chip blocking ability.
Maybe I could show K-Tron and Nick how to do it.
Okay.
Maybe that'll be the compromise.
You get roasted for that one. Okay, let's talk Theo Johnson, Chop Robinson. So it was announced that Chop Robinson is going to forego the Peach Bowl, and he's going to declare for the NFL draft. He's not playing in the Peach Bowl. Theo Johnson will also be heading to the NFL, but he will play in the Peach Bowl. Those are the only two announcements we've had so far, Sean. What are your thoughts on both of them?
Yeah, Chop didn't surprise me much. Kind of saw coming that when you have a concussion mid-year, as I suspect that he had, not confirmed, it's probably a good idea not to play in a bowl game that isn't for when you're not competing for a national championship. So I understood that. And he is a great player for us. I'll never say a bad word about Chop Robinson. I mean, just great player for the 2 years that we have. I don't think I've ever seen a guy with as much quickness off the edge. Him and Aaron Maben really have that for me. And he's even bigger than Aaron Maben was and better against the run than Aaron Maben was. So he's got that quickness off the edge, and he's going to be really, really good pro. And then Theo Johnson didn't surprise me that he's playing in the bowl game. I expected that. He was one of the guys that I was hoping would step up as a leader, and I think he did this season. So really happy with the way, with everything that I heard about him leading. I really think he's going to be one of those guys that play his best football when he's gone from Penn State. And it's really not his fault that he wasn't more productive here, but it's just kind of a read that I have on him. But happy he's going to play in the bowl game. He's an awesome athlete. He's going to tear it up at the combine, and some teams are going to fall in love with him. And I think he's going to be a top 3 round pick.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think top 3 rounds. He runs he's 260. He's going to run probably a 4 or 5.
Yeah, you tend to get attention that way.
Right. That's pretty impressive. Anything else you want to say about Chop?
Like I said, I mean, what 13 All-American, AP All-American today. That was just announced. Ogu's first team. So, I mean, he's gotten national recognition and deservedly so. And Cory and I were actually talking pre-show. Like, I'm surprised he wasn't a little higher, but I kind of forgot that he missed 2 games for us this year, really 2.5 games. So, in a way, it kind of made sense. And yeah, just never gonna say a bad word about him. There's a Will Levis pick 6. And yeah.
Will Levis pick 6. I thought he's better than Sean Clifford. Anyway.
You know how many picks Sean Clifford has in his NFL career? 0.
When Chop Robinson is the defensive rookie of the year, and people are like, why wasn't he better at Penn State, or how did James Franklin not win a national championship with him? I want people to remember that he did not play in the Ohio State game, or he did for half of a quarter.
And Chop was freaking awesome here.
Yeah.
If you watch the games, he's not in that Odafe Owe category.
No.
Where you're like, oh, how wasn't he better? Yeah, that's a good question, but Chop was really good here. And Michigan had to stop throwing the ball because they couldn't block him.
Right.
That's how good he was. So he played. One of the things going into this year that I wanted to see with him was, how's he going to play in the biggest games? Because
dominate.
In 2022, there was a bit of a drop-off against Michigan and Ohio State. Not this year. He came to play really in both games, and he just happened to get hurt in the Ohio State game, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, he fastest twitch I've ever seen. Switch I've ever seen. And I don't even know if it's that close. I really think he could be a top 10 pick. I think it would be a huge miss. People kind of joke about the Giants and how they could have taken Micah Parsons. I think people are going to be like, why did we not take Chop Robinson with our 4th round pick, our 6th round pick? If he falls past top 10, I think somebody really should probably be fired.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy, though, that I think at the combine going to blow people away because he's very, very fast and he's strong. I think he got bigger, too, this year. He seemed stronger.
Good against the run.
Yeah, he's better and he got better against the run. So he improved from his sophomore season to his junior season.
Right.
So we also saw growth with him here. I think Deion Barnes did a fantastic job with him. And I mean, we talk Deion Barnes off all the time. I mean, I think he did an A+ job with this defensive line. And true, he had a lot of talent, but I felt like everybody got better. And that's the true mark of a good coach. Everybody improved, including your best players. Nobody plateaued.
Yeah, you could say Chop Robinson had his best year. Adisa Isaac had his best year. Tanai Dennis Sutton had his best year. Devon Ellis had his best year. Zane Durant had his best year. I mean, just off the top of my head.
Yeah. Zariah Fisher, he did a great job. And I think we got a good one in Deion Barnes, which really, really encourages me.
Okay, Sean, recruiting. Again, we're going to have a week from now our 2024 class recruiting show. We're going to talk about every single guy. But before then, any other things that you wanted to mention? I just had 2. I wanted to mention that Martin, Hayes, Denmark, and Wosley all won their state championships respectfully. So I wanted to mention that. So that's Denmark and Wosley together, and then Hayes and Martin each individually won theirs. So that's 4 guys right there. And then just one random tidbit. I don't know if you know more on this or not, Sean, but running back Jabri Coleman, who was committed to Georgia, backed off his commit. And he is he from Emotep? Top of my head?
I don't know. Yeah, I think down by Philly, though. So, yeah. it's it's funny. Like this recruiting class feels like nothing has happened in the past 4 months. Like it's been a very, and I mean this in all sincerity, a very, I mean this in all positivity, I should say, a very boring class in that we got everybody to commit in the summer and then just nothing happened. And I think it's been awesome. So there's no real drama. There's not a KB on keys in my mind that I'm seeing that we're going to have to wait for, at least right now. There might be a guy that comes up like Chimdiono, like a Vega Ioane, who comes up late, but they tend to be after the early signing day, and then we go and we focus on them. So there could be a late bloomer here and there, but like I said, that's going to be something that comes later. Yeah. So right now it's all quiet on the trail. I think Hayes actually beat a team from my neck of the woods, Dallas, in the state championship. So congratulations to him and the Aliquip Equips.
I obviously want to save a lot of the recruiting for next episode, but I sit here all the time. And I'm just like, it's funny to me because when Quentin Martin committed, they're like, oh, he's the one that could potentially be a 5-star when it's all said and done. And nobody else but us was like really talking about how like much Luke Reynolds was going to rise. We didn't think he was going to probably end up being a 5-star, but like, who would have guessed that Luke Reynolds was going to be the 5-star in this class?
I know. And Martin, something we touched on when we got him, we really liked him as a receiver. And that's starting to gain some traction among people talking about that possibility that we could at least start him at receiver because, I mean, need help there. So he's a talented guy, very versatile. And yeah, I mean, Luke Reynolds, I don't know. Well, Drew Aller. I was gonna say I don't know if I've ever seen a meteoric rise like his so quickly, but as a tight end, I don't think I ever have. So really cool that seeing him skyrocket, and when you have a guy like Theo Johnson going pro, and you might be looking at Tyler Warren going pro, to still feel good about the tight ends you have. When you have a Khalil Dinkins, when you have an Andrew Rapplier, Jerry Cross, even with Luke Reynolds coming in and Joey Schlaffer there, you still feel really good about the tight end.
Yeah. One question here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. How do you feel about the wide receivers right now? Josiah Brown, Peter Gonzalez, Sear Denmark, potentially Quentin Martin. We talked about how we think Peter Gonzalez is underrated, under the radar would fit too. The Sear Denmark actually technically, I think he was originally a 4-star. I think he's a 3-star now. But how do you feel about those 3 guys right now? Because in my opinion, it's kind of an underrated room, but you don't necessarily have, again, that maybe top 4, high 4, low 5-star guy that you're like still waiting for Penn State to land. And not that it's really mattered because they landed, say, a Justin Shorter, and that didn't really help things. So I guess what are your thoughts on those receivers right now?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. They're good prospects, and I'm not sure. It's no coincidence that none of them are 5-star guys or high 4-star guys, but they don't necessarily have to be. Chris Godwin wasn't, Jahan Dotson wasn't, Allen Robinson wasn't. So could they end up being high-end players? Yeah, of course. So I really like Brown's speed. I think speed is something that we need a little bit more. I like the Gonzalez. I like his size. It's Sear Denmark. I think he's a very talented player. So, and we already touched on Quentin Martin and his versatility. So we definitely got dudes there. I just wonder, are they dudes or are they dudes?
Yeah.
Are they guys that Gus Johnson's gonna say, dude? Or come up with a stupid nickname like Maserati Marv.
Maserati Marv.
Oh my God.
You're going to miss that, Sean. Although they said
Uh,
he might get a $20 million deal and come back.
I'll believe it when I see it. But
Yeah, I'm not
I
doing
have
that
seen
either.
that mentioned.
I'm not believing that either.
Yeah.
We're done.
We are.
Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think this was a productive show. And yeah. Get your Peach Bowl merch from Mercury.
It's hard to do without pulling on my headphones. But yeah.
Also, if you're going to watch the Dolphins game after, Raheem Mostert, Mercury athlete. So keep that in mind.
There you go. What a pull. But you need to be rooting for Tyreek Hill to score me some points.
I
don't
can
know.
certainly do that.
I don't know if he's done anything yet.
I think he had a catch.
1 catch, 19 yards.
Yep.
I need 6.5 more points to win to make the playoffs in my one league. And the other guy's done. And I have Saquon, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. So I should be able to do that.
Yeah, those are the 3 most explosive guys playing tonight. So I think he'll be all right.
And then the other one.
Like Saquon, it's so weird because the Giants are so bad. Like there are times that he just doesn't do much because the Giants are so terrible.
The other one, a little bit trickier. I have your kicker, Miami's kicker. I have Jalen Waddle, but he has A-Train and Barkley. And I'm up 5 right now.
Yeah.
ESPN's giving me a 33% chance.
You know what Han Solo says? Oh, Tyreek is down and holding his leg. You know what Han Solo says? Never tell me the odds.
Great. That might have been me jinxing him right there. That might have been on me.
It very well may have.
Should we sign out before you get pissed?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Well, again, we'll be back next week. Get your bowl pick things in, Shauna. You haven't given me yours yet. And I want to say, I don't remember when I said I needed it by. I said it in the spreadsheet itself. I need it by December 15th. So you only have 4 days. So that's Friday. Need them Friday.
Okay, I think I could do that.
So get those in. Email them at hardcorecfb@gmail.com. And we'll get those going.
All right.
All right. Well, for Sean, Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next time, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.